Jumatatu mpaka Ijumaa, moja kwa moja kutoka VOA Swahili.
Hello, I'm Esther Gidoi-Yuat. This is Africa 54, and here's what's coming up. African leaders addressed the UN General Assembly as Russia's war in Ukraine took precedence in the speeches of world leaders on Wednesday. Morocco steps up assistance to children traumatized by the earthquake that devastated their homes and claimed lives of their parents. And TikTok gets under the microscope in Kenya over claims of explicit content, hate speech, and offensive behavior. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. African leaders are front and center in New York while speaking at the United Nations General Assembly. They are addressing a variety of pertinent issues ranging from democracy and security to economic development. Let's hear from some of them.
We need decision and action on debt. For like most least developed countries, Malawi is in distress because its debt is unsustainable. And so our call to action on behalf of all LDCs on this matter remains the same. Cancel the dates. Cancel the dates. Cancel the dates. As a family of nations, we have already lost 2 years of progress during the decade of action due to economic shutdowns effected to contain COVID-19. And if you want the global economy to regain that lost ground, you must cancel the debts. We have lost another 2 years of progress during this decade of action due to economic disruptions caused by the war in Eastern Europe. And if you want to see LDCs catch up on SDGs, you must cancel the debts.
Zimbabwe has been under the illegal unilateral economic sanctions for 23 years, imposed by some Western countries. These sanctions were designed to subjugate the sovereign will of the Zimbabwean people. We therefore demand that the unjustified unilateral sanctions be unconditionally lifted, including those imposed on countries like Cuba. We remain grateful for the support and solidarity of progressive countries in the Committee of Nations. In spite of these debilitating sanctions, the people of Zimbabwe have become masters of their destiny. This is anchored on a philosophy that, as a people, we have the duty and responsibility of developing our country using our own domestic resources. Partners and investors are welcome, but guided by our own vision and national priority areas.
We acknowledge the political, humanitarian, and security challenges we have faced as a country since 2013. However, we have turned the corner with the signing of the revitalized peace agreement in 2018. Now we are determined to build on the commitments of our revised national development strategy.
That is a sampling of African leaders speaking at the United Nations General Assembly in New York.
Impassioned speeches by world leaders are resonating across the conference hall at the United Nations General Assembly. During Wednesday's meeting of the UN Security Council, Russia's war in Ukraine took center stage. VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias has more from New York.
Despite Russia voicing its strong opposition and in compliance with the organization's rules, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was the first leader to address the United Nations Security Council's meeting Wednesday. He didn't just condemn Moscow's invasion of his country, but also the Council's veto system that, in his view, enables it, and called for reforms.
It is impossible to stop the war because all efforts are vetoed by the aggressor, or those who condone the aggressor. There is a need for a system to prevent aggression through early response to actions violating territorial integrity and sovereignty of states.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov defended his country's military operations and turned the criticism on those supporting Ukraine.
The collective West, led by the United States, arbitrarily assumed the rank of arbiter of the destinies of all mankind and, overwhelmed by a complex of exclusivity, began to increasingly ignore the legacy of the founding fathers.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken decried Russia's belligerence as a clear violation of the UN Charter.
Some argue that continuing to stand with Ukraine and holding Russia accountable distracts us from addressing other priorities, like confronting the climate crisis, expanding economic opportunity, strengthening health systems. That is a false choice. We can and we must do both. We are doing both.
China opted to highlight its mediation efforts.
The core message is facilitating talks for peace.
After underlining his organization's commitment to the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of Ukraine, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for restraint.
This war is already causing limitless suffering. Its continuation risks further perilous escalation. There is never an alternative to dialogue, diplomacy, and a just peace.
Guterres added the United Nations will continue working toward a peaceful resolution to the conflict in line with the UN Charter, international law, and the resolutions of the General Assembly.
For more on the UNGA, I'm joined live from UN headquarters by VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias. Veronica, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has been holding meetings with African leaders on the sidelines of the UNGA. What more can you share with us?
Yes, hi, Esther. Well, he actually met with the Kenyan president this morning, and according to one spokesperson, he reiterated the importance of the partnership between Kenya and the United States, this long-standing partnership that is also showing leadership on the side of Kenya in terms of providing opportunities for global peace and stability. As well, Blinken was grateful for the Kenyan president consideration of leading a multinational supporting a security mission to Haiti. We must remember that the Kenyan president would lead this proposal by the U.S. In the context of the UN Security Council to help combat the gangs' warfare. So this proposal will be put to a vote or is expected to be put to a vote in the coming days, Esther.
We've sampled a few presidents from Africa who spoke earlier today. We've heard them speak, but what has been the highlight so far of the other presidents from the continent that have spoken at the UN General Assembly?
Well, I can tell you Burundi focused his speech on migration flows. The president was emphasizing the need to understand that although it is true that migration flows could threaten peace and security, it's important that the developed nations understand that there are root causes like poverty, and be kind to people that are just trying to have better lives. They have to travel, they have to put their own safety at risk to have decent work. So he said it is important that developed nations and people who are struggling are able to build collaboration, build partnerships so that decent work is offered to those people. And meanwhile, it's important to respect the human rights of those people that are migrating and make sure that they are protected, Esther. On the other hand, we have the Central African Republic. They also spoke about the need to reform the UN Security Council and to give or grant a permanent seat to Africa. He was mentioning that there were unjust treatments of Africa, and it is important that leaders unite, that during, for instance, two very important events. One of them is the 80th anniversary of the United Nations in 2025, and the Summit of the Future in 2024. Those will provide opportunities for the nations to actually try to come up with solutions to reform the Security Council, Esther.
Veronica, many thanks for your excellent reporting. VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias reporting live for us at the UN headquarters in New York. Now to Libya, where flooding killed thousands of people in the city of Derna and more than 43,000 are displaced, according to the International Organization for Migration. Although the official death toll stands at more than 3,000, the eventual count is expected to be much higher. International aid groups estimate that up to 10,000 people are missing. Mobile and internet services are working again after a two-day disruption. Meanwhile, the United Nations warns that disease outbreaks could bring a second devastating crisis to the flood-hit areas. Morocco is stepping up assistance to children traumatized by a recent powerful earthquake that devastated their homes and claimed lives of their parents. It is more than 10 days since the deadly quake struck Morocco's high Atlas Mountains, killing almost 3,000 people. About 100,000 children have been impacted. Many died, but others were left injured, displaced or orphaned, according to the UN Children's Agency.
Moroccan authorities are helping all victims, but children benefit from a very special status and aid. The children who should be at school are still in shock after the earthquake. Now they need to find hope in life and go back to school. The Mohammed V Foundation is providing counseling and orientation to children. This initiative is a partnership with the Education Ministry and all stakeholders to help them gradually resume a normal life in the damaged regions. Our aim is to help these children become psychologically stable.
Children who have lost their parents and relatives, as well as their homes and schools, are being taken into the care of the state. Tensions are high between foreign nationals and locals in the Diepsloot Township of South Africa, north of Johannesburg. The simmering emotions follow the stoning of a robber to death after complaints that crime by illegal foreigners is out of control. Tuso Kumalo reports from Johannesburg.
We are here at Diepsloot Township, where a person was murdered here. It is alleged that robbers were shooting around this area, and when residents heard, they pursued them. One of them was caught just not far away from us here. That person was stoned to death, and residents are very angry, saying these are people who have been harassing them and causing havoc in the area. They are saying they can't even go to the shops freely. They can't even walk at night here or in the evening because of the crime that is happening here.
These people that come outside are Zimbabweans, and I thought these people that are doing these things is the people that they don't have the papers to come in South Africa.
Just last week we have had a number of breaking-ins. We had a family that was gunned down just in this area.
We need the government to sort out the issue of illegal immigrants. it's an outcry from the community.
We tried to speak to some foreign nationals that are living in this place, but all of them said they fear that they will be victimized because after this incident, they are saying it's likely there might be violence directed to foreign nationals. But we went out of this area to speak to Ngabuto Mabena. He's the chairman of the Zimbabwe community in South Africa about these accusations that foreign nationals are behind most of these crimes that are happening. Let's hear what he had to say.
When we went there last year for a community meeting, what was agreed was that it is not only migrants that are involved in criminal activities, it all involves South Africans, but migrants get targeted simply because they are not born in South Africa.
But their residents are saying they cannot wait anymore. They want to be held and held now. If they are not held, they've threatened that they will continue taking the law into their own hands, and a lot of these criminals will die in their hands. Tuso Kumalo for VOA News in Johannesburg.
Thanks, Tuso. The African Union peacekeeping force in Somalia is gradually withdrawing from the country in anticipation of Somali forces taking over security duties by the end of 2024. AU forces have been deployed since 2007 to help the Somali government fight the Al-Shabaab militant group. Mohammed Sheikh Noor reports from Mogadishu.
After 16 years protecting government installations and land in South and Central Somalia, the African Union Peacekeeping Force, known since 2022 as the African Union Transition Mission in Somalia, or ATMIS, has started to withdraw from the country as national forces are expected to fill the role by the end of 2024. In June, 2,000 ATMIS soldiers were withdrawn, transferring 6 forward operating bases, or FOBs, to Somalia's national forces. In the next phase now underway, another 3,000 are expected to leave Somalia by the end of September. Lieutenant General Sam Okeding, the ATMIS force commander, says the drawdown has been gradual to prevent security vacuum.
It is not one move. If it was a one move, then we would say, no, things are going to be bad. But this one is orderly, from step by step.
National forces will be ready to replace ATMIS when 2 conditions are met, says Abdirahman Mohamed Touriere, a former director of Somalia National Intelligence and Security Agency.
The first condition is that Somalia forces must be provided with the same level of assets and equipment as ATMIS. And the second condition is that the United Nations arms embargo imposed on Somalia must be lifted.
Although the Somali forces are considered ill-equipped, Ibrahim Hassan Haji, the Ministry of Defense's Director of Communications, has confidence in their ability.
As you may well know, Somali forces have occupied the forward operating bases vacated by ATMIS, and we believe that they are able to handle the control of these bases.
Hassan Sheikh, a political analyst and former advisor to Somali president, would like to see a more autonomous Somalia after ATMIS fully withdraws.
The African Union has long been providing assistance to the country and its people, and when they withdraw from Somalia, the Somali people will need to take responsibility for their own affairs, form the national government, and unite with it to ensure its protection with Somali power and resources, rather than foreign funds.
The African Union Peacekeeping Mission has been in Somalia since 2007, supporting the Somali government in combating the Al-Shabaab insurgencies. In spite of this, Al-Shabaab's war is not over as the group continues to hold towns, villages and remote areas. Mohammed Sheikh Noor, VOA News, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Widespread insecurity has rocked Nigeria with armed attacks and kidnappings in the northwest, Islamist insurgency in the northwest, and violent sectarian and herder farmer clashes in the central region. And for a better understanding of the challenges successive Nigerian governments face in efforts to stem the violence, I'm joined by Sunday Dare, former Nigerian Minister of Youth and Sports. Sunday, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Esther, for having me today.
Now let's talk about the persistent insecurity issues in Nigeria. There have been a lot of efforts by previous governments to deal with those insecurity issues. What are your thoughts and why has this persisted?
Well, let me substitute the word persistent to a dwindling, because over time, perhaps in the last 15 to 16 months, we have seen concerted efforts by our security forces. The military operations have recorded a lot of successful effort at pushing back the insurgency, but also attacking their bases. When you do a cursory check, you will find out that in the last 6 months, that has abated to a large extent. So what we have now is new service chiefs with a new template given by the new president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to go out and route out. And the new army chief has also given a timeline that before the December or December this year, Nigeria should be able to look at its security position and be able to say we're at the point in which we're comfortable that we've been able to nip in the bud the extremists that we have in the country.
Sunday, let me take you back to your days as former Minister for Youth and Sports, because a lot of youth in Nigeria talk about high unemployment. Right. They are not happy with that. And some people say insecurity issues arise from that situation of where the youth have no jobs and also persistent high, level corruption in the country. How do you address that kind of situation?
There's been an engagement with the Nigerian youth population by successive governments. And let me start by saying the current government, for instance, kept its promise to make sure that the youth got a seat at the table of power. When you look at the roster of the new ministers, almost 8 of them or so. In fact, the new Minister of Youth and Sports, of youth particularly, is below 40. We have seen this government keeping true to its promises to make sure the youth are involved. What they want to sit at the table, they want to be engaged, they want to be part of providing the solution to our problems. And recently we had the education scholarship fund bill approved by Mr. President, which is huge because the cost of education is also massive. But you agree with me that the problem of unemployment is not only in Nigeria, it cuts across. And the pathway towards that is entrepreneurship. And government is investing so much in turning our youth into entrepreneurs and wealth creators. It's going to be an ongoing battle, if I may say. But of course, government will take care of our youth.
Sunday, we will have to leave it there. I wanted to hear what Tinubu is doing about the unrest in West Africa as ECOWAS chief, but we will have to talk about that another time. Sunday, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sunday Dare is former Nigerian Minister of Youth and Sports. Still to come, the wildly popular app TikTok is under growing scrutiny in Kenya. We'll be right back.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linoch Mudu, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
In other news, a bird flu outbreak in South Africa may cause shortages of chicken in the nation in the coming months, according to Astro Foods, the country's largest producer of poultry. The nation's electricity crisis, combined with bird flu outbreak that is spreading across Gauteng and Mpumalanga provinces, is being blamed for the possible chicken shortages. On the 10th anniversary of the deadly Westgate Mall attack, Kenya is pledging reinforced security measures against Somali militants. In 2013, 67 people were killed during an attack by gunmen from Somalia's Al-Shabaab terrorist group at the upscale mall in Nairobi. And the son of Ali Bongo and several allies of the ousted Gabonese president are being charged with corruption and are in custody, according to the state prosecutor. Bongo's eldest son, Nureddin Bongo Valentin, was indicted on charges of counterfeiting, embezzlement of public funds, and money laundering. TikTok is under growing scrutiny in Kenya over what critics see as explicit content, hate speech, and offensive behavior. An activist has petitioned Parliament to ban the Chinese app, but millions of young Kenyans use it for entertainment, social connections, or even to make money. Francis Ontomwa reports from Nairobi.
Then you end up with something that's so messy.
Anna Montez is a minor TikTok sensation. She shares live tutorials on makeup artistry at least 3 times a week. Not long ago, she had a conventional job, but quit to concentrate on her passion. Today, Montez says she's making more money than her job ever offered.
I've seen myself get followers. I've seen myself grow up to 20,000 new followers in like 2 weeks. And with that comes customers, comes interactions, comes brand collaborations, a lot of things. So that has been a new experience, interesting, and I'm loving this space.
Montez is just one of millions of Kenyans who use TikTok and one of a growing group leveraging the social media platform to try to make a living. But Montez's prospects could be threatened if an activist has his way. Bob Ndolo, an IT specialist and a father of 2, wants TikTok shut down in Kenya. He recently submitted a petition to Parliament asking lawmakers to consider a ban on the app.
With TikTok, you go to a live coverage and you'll find those young girls that you can call your sister, your auntie, your mother. They are all there, yeah, half naked. And what they are doing, they are selling their bodies.
According to a 2023 survey by Reuters Institute Digital News report, Kenya is a global powerhouse in the use of TikTok. 54% of Kenyans utilize the platform for various reasons. The Kenyan government says TikTok and other social media apps contribute $3 million every month to Kenya's economy. Recently, President William Ruto held a virtual meeting with TikTok CEO who agreed to implement some restrictions on the app and establish an official presence in Kenya. Globally, numerous countries have imposed partial or total bans on the Chinese-owned application on privacy and security grounds. In Africa, Senegal and Somalia have banned TikTok, and at least 3 other nations are considering similar measures.
Governments are supposed to be able to come up with regulatory processes and policies that can govern the way such foreign applications are being used in the country. Right now, if those measures are not put in place, how are we going to make sure that we are protecting ourselves and our kids?
Montez says anti-TikTok activists are not being realistic about the modern world.
And I do understand why it's a concern. But the truth is that these things have happened in real life. They have not started now. So as things change, as technology improves, these things will still penetrate into these spaces. That does not mean that you ban the space entirely. Yeah? We don't all have to suffer.
Parliament has yet to begin formal debate on the proposed ban. In the meantime, Kenyans find themselves torn between preserving digital rights for its creative youth and keeping the online environment safe for its population. Francis Ontomwa for VOA News, Nairobi.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.